Okay, this is the follow-up video for the 1913 Victrola the Ninth, number 72576-C, in red mahogany, and you can see the case has been cleaned. Looks a little shiny, but that is wax. The original patina has not been disturbed, just the dirt has been cleaned off of it. And it's in remarkably good condition, considering it's 107 years old. You can see a little spot on top here. At some point, somebody probably had a little flower pot or a decorative vase or whatever was up there. Very common in the day. Probably had a little doily with it. No major problems were discovered in this machine. We had the motor out, completely disassembled, cleaned, re-lubricated, put back together. Now, at first glance, I thought that the governor was in good shape. Turned out it wasn't. Somebody had replaced one of the springs, and they cross-threaded a bolt. I had to re-tap the hole. But that's been fixed, and all three, and they also lost a bunch of little washers too. Those are replaced also. I replaced all three of the governor springs. Now, whenever you change a spring on one of these machines, and it's more than one spring, like the mainsprings or the governor springs will always be either two or three. Always do them in sets. Don't just do one, because what happens then is you have one spring that's weak, one spring that's strong, and it's just not working effectively like that. Now the mainsprings, much to my surprise, turned out to have been replaced. Both of them. They're a matching set, very good condition, plenty of power left in them, and it had been done long enough ago that the black graphite grease had turned back to stone again. So I'm guessing the 1930s, maybe the 1940s. Somebody obviously was taking care of the machine. I guess toward the end they couldn't find someone to fix that governor, so they attempted it themselves. Didn't have the tools or the know-how maybe, I don't know. But it's all fixed now, and the motor's in great shape. All the gears are very nice condition, which is not surprising because the Victor company, their products were top of the line, and this was definitely not an entry-level machine. I mean, even, I guess if you can consider the Victrola 4, the Victrola the Fourth, to be entry-level, because it was the smallest of the tabletops without a lid, even that one is incredibly well built. You know, there's nothing cheap about it. It was just a lesser expensive machine because it was smaller. These sold better than any other Victor model in the history of the company. The Victrola the Ninth. Everybody loved this model. They made other tabletop models with a lid. The 8 was the second most popular. And they had a few lesser, models here and there that were around for a couple years maybe. But they had really, this tops them all. And this being a transitional machine, as I mentioned in the last video, you have a slightly different motor than the earlier models. You have the floating horn, which is much, much more efficient than the box horn the originals had, and easier to manufacture too, besides that. And, little small features like the auto brake, things like that. Definitely, this machine was around, I believe, over $1,000 in today's money when it was new. And they got played. People played these all the time because this is no radio, no television. Going to the theater was expensive and often beyond the reach of many people if they didn't have a theater in their town. A vaudeville show or something like that. So your entertainment, other than telling yourself stories and reading books, was the Victrola. And despite all of that use I know it would have had for probably 20 or 30 years originally in its first life, the motor just looks like it's barely been used. But that's not unusual. I find that a lot on these machines, on Victrolas. Not every phonograph motor is as good as a Victrola motor, but definitely these ones are very nice. This is a 2-spring motor in here. Now, the Ninth was made from 1911 to 1924. They kept selling them in dealer inventory past 1926. I believe they made 500, 600,000, something like that. It was a pretty big number, pretty big number. Now let's take a look under the lid. I haven't changed the felt. I decided to leave it. I'm thinking about it. I can change it anytime. But it really isn't, it's still doing its job. It has that ugly little needle scratch there. But it's still doing its job, and it's been doing its job for 107 years. I'm just, resistant to pulling that off unless I absolutely have to. I mean, if it was large sections of bare metal showing through and it wasn't protecting the records, then I would do it. But it is protecting the records. It's doing its job, so I'm inclined to leave it alone. Now, the reproducer is the Exhibition. That's the only choice for these models in these years. That's all they had. And the Exhibition, is very, very well made. It works very well, and I'm going to tell you there's not a heck of a lot of difference between it and the number 2, or even the number 4. They all play the records of this era very well. In fact, Victor kept the Exhibition around longer than any of its other acoustic reproducers. I believe they were still using this on the Victrola right up until 1928 and 29. Just a very nice reproducer to work with. They look nice. But, and here's the thing, if you have one of these machines, you're playing records with a reproducer that has not been rebuilt, it's like night and day. You're not only destroying your records by not allowing the needle the freedom it needs to move around, but you're robbing sound because all the gaskets are going to be open and cracked, causing air leaks that rob sound and fidelity. Now, if you look at this reproducer, we have a large rubber gasket on the back here, and the front, and there's 2 O-ring rubber gaskets. They're not O-rings, they're tube gaskets actually, in here. Rubber, natural rubber, which is what they use, simply does not survive 107 years. It doesn't survive 50 years. 25 years is pushing it. You should ideally rebuild one of these when you see visible problems, or every 25 years. And I've actually had some of these long enough that I have rebuilt them twice. And I have found that the rubber's a little stiff and starting to warp and crack and whatnot. But as you can see, it's all back together now and playing very well. Okay, let's see. We have, for those who care, the record. Paul Whitman was one of the most prolific and popular dance band leaders of the 1920s and 30s, for that matter, too. As this record's in good condition. Now, here's the thing about spring power. This 2-spring machine, like I said, and it will play easily. I didn't try to push it past 4 sides of a record. That's 2 records, both, flip it over. It'll probably do more than that, but a lot of that depends on the record itself, not on the machine. The machine's always going to have whatever power it has. Records are the variable there, because some records that are badly worn, and it could look beautiful and shiny like this one, but down in the grooves where it matters, it could be all torn up. And what that does is put tremendous drag on the needle as you're playing the record. And that robs spring power. You'll get less performance out of each windup. So if you're playing worn records, you can't expect the machine is going to perform optimally. But if you have beautiful, clean, nice condition records, like this one, then you can play easily, 4, maybe 5 sides, I don't know. I don't like to push it beyond 4 because it's wasteful, and you should never really wind one of these up in the middle of a song. If that happens, take the needle off the record, put the brake on, wind the machine up, change the needle, and start again. Because records, you don't want to damage them, because while you can fix the machine, once the record is worn, it's done forever. That's it. It's gone. Nobody is reproducing records for these machines. That record on there is probably from the early to mid 1920s. And once it's cracked, broken, gouged all the hell, or the grooves are worn out, you cannot replace it. So keep that in mind when you if you choose to abuse records. You see a nice big Victrola decal on there. These are really, really nice. Just the idea they were able to have enough red mahogany to make these hundreds of thousands of machines. You could never do that today. There's simply not enough material left anymore to do that. And it would be cost prohibitive. Oh, well, let's play it. I already wound it up. And I set the auto brake. That's the auto brake back there. These have to be set manually. I'm going to demonstrate how to set it. Okay. First, let's do that. Okay, now it's not set. What you do, see, you make contact here. See how it's contacting there? The little arm is hitting it. Okay. Now you feel resistance here. You're going to move that arm out until you get to about where you think the song ends. Maybe right about there. It's hard to get it right. You notice there's no eccentric on these. So that means the needle just rides in the last groove if you let it go. And this is supposed to, in theory, shut it off. But you have to reset it for each individual record, because some records might end up here. They might end a little beyond that. So you have to set each one individually. Okay, let's turn that on. Open the sound doors. It's funny how many people think this is for record storage. You look on these eBay auctions and they always talk about there's record storage in the front. No, it's the horn. Okay. And always close the lid on the lid of the Victrola. Cuts down on record hiss. Let's see if the auto brake actually does it. And it worked that time. Okay. Well, we got plenty of spring power left. Maybe we'll play side 2. Paul Whiteman, let's see. Back up your sin. Oh boy. There you go. And always change the needle because needles are cheap. You can buy them by the 100 pack, by the 1,000 pack, by the 10,000 pack. While records are irreplaceable, and the rule is 1 play per needle. After you saw me discard it, 1 play in the little needle cup. That's what this is for. That's your spent needles, and these are your good needles. We even have some fiber needles in there, but I'm not going to play those right now. I don't have a sharpener for them, so. All right, let's check to see. Looks like we're going to have to go a little bit further with this one. Whoop, went too far that time. You can see how this could be somewhat of a pain to use. But it's better than nothing. It was a vast improvement over not having anything and you have to stand there and manually turn the machine off. Okay, I think we may have it. Okay. And as I said before, always close the lid on a lidded Victrola because you do get some record hiss out the side of the reproducer and such like that. I mean, it's not horribly, annoying, but if you don't have to have it, why have it? So. work twice. Sometimes you get it on right on, and sometimes you don't. But that's the nature of the beast. Okay, now I use this particular record on here because this record is in very good condition. Just wasn't played that much back in the day. And it shows what these machines are capable of as far as sound reproduction goes. Very nice. Most people don't associate that level of playing with a Victrola. They think it's tinny, scratchy, and nasty sounding because that's how it sounds when you don't service them and you use an original reproducer with original gaskets that are just shot. But here we go. Now, I decided to leave the felt on the turntable because it is actually still doing its job. It is still protecting the records. It does have a needle scratch there from somebody playing 10-inch records. You know, if you played a 12-inch, you wouldn't have that. But I like to leave things as original as I can, and that felt has been on there for 107 years, and I'm just not inclined to change it unless I absolutely had to. It just doesn't look that bad. There were big missing patches showing metal through and all that. Yeah, I would change it to horrible rust stains, no problem. But the way it is there, I want to leave that alone. It's part of the history of the machine. And that pretty much covers everything, I suppose. I just, I love working in particular with the 9. It's a very nice machine to work on. I've worked on so many of them, I could do them in my sleep just about. But my favorite, playing machine, I use one of these myself to play records, and this is my machine too, but it's going to eventually be sold. I have too many of them, unfortunately. I have several nice ones, oak and mahogany ones at home that I play frequently. This is what I normally play records on, unless I'm out in the field, in which case I'll use one of the portables. The Victrola the 9th, 1913. And there you go. There it is. Playing and alive again. Now, I have another one of these, same year. Pretty much the same features, waiting to be done. If that's going to be done probably later on in the winter when I get around to it. The next one I'm working on is a Victrola the 6th. That's the larger of the two lidless tabletop models. A nice little 1923 mahogany model. There's the tone arm for it there. That's being worked on right now. Now that this one is done. But there you go. Look at a nice Victrola the 9th.